Hi everyone, I think this is probably one of the most challenging examples of our Math 082 word problems. So I definitely wanted to make a video on this, okay? This is still 2.4. So let's read through the problem. It says John invests $5,000, and again I'm going to use that process of highlighting anything that's a number and or that seems like important, right? So he invests $5,000 into one account, and then he invests $8,000 into another account, and this account, it says, pays 4% more interest than the other account, okay? Then it says that he earned $1,230 in interest after 1 year, okay? And then remember, the last part is the most important, okay? Because it tells us what we're solving for and therefore what our variables are, okay? So we have two accounts, right? We have one account, okay? And we have another one, right? A second account. We'll call this account 1, account 2, okay? And we want to know the interest rate in each account. So that tells us that in this particular problem, our variables are going to be the interest rate of account 1. I'm going to abbreviate it here. Okay. And it's also the interest rate of account number 2. Okay. They don't specify the accounts any other way. They just mention that there are two of them. Okay. So at this point, we need to assign variables. No particular letter is really suggesting itself to me, so I'm just going to call this X and that Y. It's quite boring and uninteresting, unfortunately. Okay, so we know we're trying to find these two interest rates, right? And then we need to organize this information, okay? So if we think about this investing, right, we have a few things going on, right? So the best way that I know to organize my information when I have word problems is in a table. So I almost always make myself a table to organize information. So he invests $5,000, right? So the first column I'm going to say is, I'm going to call it the amount. And you know what? I just realized I'm going to need a little bit of room on the left-hand side, because we have two accounts. We have account 1 and account 2. Okay, so we actually are going to want 2 rows there. Okay, so the first thing we are told is the amount of money that's being invested. Okay, so we know, if we look here, that $5,000 are invested in what we're just calling account 1, right? And then we're told that $8,000 is being invested in the second account. Okay. So then the next thing is the amount of interest. Okay. So that's going to be our second column, is the amount of interest. Okay. If you don't know much about investing money, that just means if you put a certain amount of money in at the end of, in this case, 1 year, you'll have more money than you started with, okay? And that extra money is called interest. Okay, so the amount of interest, it doesn't say, right? If you think about this sentence right here, is it account 1, right? Or is it account 2? Okay, right, it's not clear. So actually, what they're trying to tell us is, and they probably should have used the word total here, is that $1,230 is the total amount of interest that he earned between both accounts. Okay, so we don't know, right? I mean, if you want to, you could put like a little question mark here. We're not really sure, right, how much he earned from each account, but we know that total he earned, or he gains, $1,230. Okay, and if you want to, you can obviously add 5 and 8 together and get 13,000. That's not necessarily going to help us in this problem, but if you wanted to just fill out your chart, you could put that there. Okay, so what is the last column in our table? Well, the last column is the actual interest rate right? And that's where we put our variables, which I call x and y, okay? And you really don't want to fill in that last box, okay? It is really not meaningful to add interest rates together in this problem, or really any other problem. Okay, so you might be looking at this and still thinking, well, gee golly, I'm still not sure, right, where to go, right? Where are my equations? What should I write? Okay, so one thing that we need to know about interest, right, is the amount of interest, right, like this question mark right here, okay, is actually going to be $5,000 times my interest rate, okay? And if that seems a little bit strange to you, okay, let's just think about it, right? If I invest $1,000 at a 5% interest rate, totally making this up here, right? But if I did that, right, the amount of interest that I would have, right, the extra amount of money would just be $1,000 times 0.05 or times 5%, okay? So I would have an extra $50. That's how you calculate interest. In this case, it's simple interest. It's not compound interest. So if you've ever worked with those kinds of formulas before, this is just simple interest, okay? So likewise, down here, right, the amount of interest that I'm going to have from this account is the amount of money I put in there, which was $8,000, times this interest rate here. Okay. So at this point, you might notice that one of these equations, or one of these columns actually just kind of generated an equation. Okay, and that's this column right here. Okay, so if we have the amount of interest in account 1, I'm going to use the next page here. Okay, the amount of interest in account 1 was $5,000 times x. The amount of interest generated by the second account was $8,000 y, and the total amount was $1,230. Okay, so this is equation number 1. Okay, now the problem here is if I have two variables and I want to solve for them, then I need a second equation. Okay, so if we go back to our original word problem, you might notice that there's one piece of information that we haven't used yet. And that piece of information is this information right here where it says that the second account, right, pays 4% more than the first account. Okay, so I'm going to add this in a different color. Okay, the second account, y, whatever this interest rate, is the interest rate of the first account plus 0.04, right? Because 4% is not the same as 4. 4% is 4 out of 100, or 0.04. Okay, so this piece of information is actually our second equation. It's a relationship between the two interest rates. Okay, so if we go to this next page here, go back to our black ink, right, now we have y is equal to x plus 0.04. Okay, and if you wanted to, really, you could have set up the table with just x and x plus 0.04 and never have introduced a second variable. That would have been a totally valid approach. Okay, and as I mentioned last time, right, at this point you can use graphing, you can use substitution, or you can use elimination. It doesn't matter. To me, looking at this, the fastest way to do it looks to me like elimination. I mean, not elimination, so sorry. It looks like substitution. That's what I would do. So I would take this expression right here and put it in place of y if I were to solve for this. Right, so I'd have 5,000x plus 8,000 times x plus 0.04 equals 1,230. okay? And then you'd have to go through and you'd solve for x, and then you plug x back into the equation, and then you would solve for y, okay? I'm going to stop the video here. I don't want this to be too long. I will make other videos and post them that are just going over the methods of elimination and substitution. But hopefully that really helps you to understand how to set up the problem and generate those two equations.